This is the Fatty Joe Show, coming to you from Casa de Carrie, deep in the forests of Nutmegerville. This show is dedicated to exploring pathways to better health from a holistic perspective. In each episode, we will explore such topics as nutrition, mental and emotional health, fitness, and more. I'm Yogi, your host, and I became interested in studying health after conventional health dogma became damaging and led me to become massively overweight. Against modern convention, I went on a keto lifestyle and I lost over 300 pounds and gained a level of control on my personal health that I never had before. Now I'm on a journey to find out what is myth and what is truth in the ever convoluted world of what is considered healthy. Come join me on a journey of discovery as I look for a path to improve total health. If you'd like to support the show, head over to patreon.com/thefattyjoeshow or patreon.com/Carrie Brown. If you want to check out all of our social media links and recipes, head to carriebrown.com. Don't forget to leave a comment, like, and subscribe to the show.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Fatty Joe Show. This is your host, Yogi, and I'm coming to you from the Nutmegerville Forest in the heart of the Carrieland Forest here in Connecticut. And today's guest is Berto, Alberto. And he is one of the trio of hosts from the Keto Mans Club. He's used to be a keto coach. Are you still doing the keto coach thing, or?
No, I mean, I've never really been officially a coach. I just have been, we did a little boot camp and just kind of did that. And then we needed to revamp it. And then, the world kind of spiraled down the toilet. So it kind of went that route. And we're still considering bringing it back. And it was just more for the beginners in our group that had absolutely no clue and just needed a little bit of boot camp and a little more aggressive style coaching. So there's a chance it'll come back. But as of now, no, it's just kind of sitting on the sidelines.
That's cool. So Berto and Jim Inman, who started the group, and Chris Duckett are part of the Keto Mans Club podcast and Facebook group, and they're on Discord and a few other places. They've set up this really cool area for men to go to get more information and support and share, and a safe place to be as far as talking about not just keto, but other things that are going on in their life, and just a healthy place for men to be. They're one of the first men's focused keto podcasts out there. And Berto himself has a very interesting story about how he came to keto. He was experiencing issues of a severe digestive and gut disorder called ulcerative colitis. And this is something I don't know a whole lot about, and I deliberately didn't want to research a whole lot because I wanted Berto to be able to tell us about what this is and how it affects people, because I do understand it affects different people in different ways. But we're going to get into about how diet helped him and different things he's tried, but we're also want to talk about the illness itself and maybe some information of what brings it on, whether it's genetic, whether it's environmental, or what's going on with that. So, Berto, welcome to the show, boss, and it's great to have you on. I get to actually see you virtually in person.
Yeah.
So, and I'm glad I warned people before they come on the show. We do videos so people wear pants and stuff.
Yeah, it's important. You're lucky you caught me with a shirt on today. It's a good day.
Oh, we are trying to get ratings, so maybe the shirt thing is,
maybe towards the end I'll just do one of these, rip it off, twist it over my head.
I was thinking about bringing cats through because cat videos are so popular. So just try to bring cats through. So
won't hurt. I got a Chihuahua the size of a cat. Maybe he'll make a cameo.
There you go. Yeah.
But yeah, man, thanks for having me on. My real name is Alberto Casillas. On Facebook, I'm EL-BERTO, Alberto. It's kind of a running joke, as in the Berto. And just one of those things where I changed my name as a joke, And then this was a long time ago. And at the time when you went to change your name back, like once you would change your name, it had to stay for a while. You couldn't change it back. And I went through like 6 months to try to change it back. And finally I was like, you know what? It was meant to be. I don't even care anymore. So the name stayed. But brief intro about me: husband, father of 3. I have far too many jobs. Podcast being one of them. By trade, I am actually an automotive painter who switched to the service side. So now I train automotive painters specifically for the company that I work for. Co-host the podcast, avid weightlifter. Still do a bunch of side work in the automotive painting field. Help people out as much as I can, just through Messenger and through social media with keto and the IBD stuff, which we'll get into in a second here. But yeah, man, I stay entirely way too busy, and trying to juggle all that and keep a family focus is always, the sleep's important too. So you got to get that in there.
Yeah. Sometimes you get wrapped up in a whole lot of projects, and it could be, you forget some of the other things that are important that you got to focus on too, because you go to sleep and it's like, well, I'm not being productive while I sleep.
Yeah, you gotta. I learned that when it's time to shut down, it's just time to shut down. And there's tomorrow. Get the important stuff done. Obviously, I have a house. There's no shortage of projects. You live in a house. Anybody lives in a house. There's no shortage of things that got to get done in a house. So I try to get the important stuff done. If I can touch on the house projects, and then the other stuff that I got going on. There's a car in the garage I need to work on. I'm building an outdoor kitchen piece by piece that I haven't touched in a while. So yeah, I mean, little by little, everything will come together.
Yeah. I hear you. So you have had this illness that developed. I don't know, when did the ulcerative colitis develop?
Out of high school. So I graduated at 17. If I had to, I mean, you would think I would know this, but I would say probably 18, 19 years old. And to touch on ulcerative colitis, it is an autoimmune disease. IBD, Crohn's kind of falls into all that. There's really no known cause. Your immune system tends to make a mistake and attacks your intestines because it just doesn't recognize them as what they're supposed to be doing. There's no known cause. There's no known cure. They just rely, and I'll caveat all this, that everything I'm about to say, I'm 100% speaking for myself, because everybody's case is different. And I learned a long time ago, don't dare you compare yourself to someone else with these things, because you'll always be wrong. I get yelled at enough from people I don't know, and it's just not worth it. But they throw meds at it, and for me specifically, it was almost like they were throwing darts at a dartboard, and let's see what sticks. And if that doesn't work, well, then we'll shuffle you over here. If that doesn't work, we'll shuffle you over here. And then there's infusions and biologics and probiotics, and it's almost like they just hope to hit on what you agree with, or what your body agrees with, and see if you can just manage it. And by manage it, again, in regards to my experience, diet was never brought up. I've lived in 4 states, had multiple doctors in each state. Never once did managing it through diet ever come up. So that in hindsight is kind of a sticking point with me, but you can't hang on to that kind of hate. So you just let it kind of go. But yeah, they throw meds at it and tell you to eat clean, live your life, and take your medications, and then we'll just monitor things and blood work and colonoscopies and all that, and then just kind of hope you can stay in remission and find the right set of medications to get you there, which depending on the severity of the case and the individual, can be incredibly frustrating, because it could take years, if not decades, to dial in the meds for you. And like I said a second ago, without anyone ever bringing up anything about diet. And then I'm also in a bunch of the support groups that are also on social media. And it's very rare that someone brings up that, they're at their specialist, and their specialist actually recommended they look into diet, or they adjust diet. It all tends to be meds. And in hindsight, I'm on the other side of this now, so I can speak about it in hindsight. It's not the way to go about it, but that's the way, it's no different with anything else. That's the world we live in now. You go into a doctor, you get 10 minutes of FaceTime. They either slap you on the wrist or, pat you on the back and write you their prescription and head on down the road.
Yeah, I've had a couple of doctors on the show now, and that's one of the things that we talk about quite a bit. Generally, when you're talking about medical treatment, the philosophy that doesn't seem to get put into practice a lot is go from the least invasive procedure and then work your way up. And you would think that altering your diet would be the least invasive procedure than going to these medications with a lot of side effects. I had a friend who was bulimic and had a lot of gut issues with throwing up and things like that. Like she, even after she wasn't trying to force herself to purge, she would eat something and it would come back up. It just, that's how it was. And stress would bring it on. They gave her anti-nausea medicines that, I kid you not, the side effect of the anti-nausea medicines, like third one down, was nausea.
It's comical. It's comical in hindsight, and when it doesn't apply to you. But when you're that person, I can only imagine the nightmare. But to touch on the ulcerative colitis, to bring in a little bit of the horror stories of it, because it's not to be taken lightly. Like, I'll make a lot of jokes about it, and like there's trauma and there's stuff that messes with your head forever when you're at a super young age and your body's broken. But some of the symptoms that I experienced, diarrhea is an understatement. Severe urgency is an understatement. Like, we could be having this conversation. Again, in the past, I'd get a gurgle in my stomach and I might have 30 seconds to make it to a bathroom. And mind you, we could be holding this conversation. I could be driving my car, could be sitting in church, could be at the movies, could be at the restaurant, could be grocery shopping. And like, you have no control over it. It's coming out whether you find a bathroom or not. So it becomes extremely tricky. The anxiety goes through the roof. I did an interview with MeatRx, and the lady that interviewed me actually had mentioned, and I never thought of it this way, but she had mentioned that after I went through all this, that it almost seems like there's like a little bit of PTSD involved there. And I had never thought of it that way, but I can almost agree with it, because even now, like when I walk into a store, whether I think about it or not, the first thing I do is look around and see where the bathrooms are at. Because back then, you have to. You don't have a choice. And then, like, God forbid you go to a gas station where the bathrooms, you got to ask for a key, or there's only one stall. That kind of stuff puts your anxiety and panic through the roof. So back to the wonderful symptoms. Passing blood. And I'm not talking about a little bit. I mean, horror story. Like, you get up from the toilet and turn around and it's severe. Like, you need to get to a hospital now. Bad stuff. Anemia, because nothing sticks to you. Everything you eat seems to go through you when you're at your worst. Exhaustion. I lived a few years of my life where my skin had this like really green hue and I had black bags under my eyes, and I was just like extremely emaciated and undernourished, but I just kind of pushed through that because I was young and stubborn. Medications all over the place. And then, I mean, on top of that, the social aspect, you don't want to go anywhere. You don't want to hang out with people because you just never know what's ahead of you for the day. So there's a lot that goes on with it. Physical is probably a good 80% of it, but I mean the stuff you go through mentally when you're as broken on the inside as you can be, will definitely take its toll on you after a long time.
Yeah, I can only imagine, and the social stigma of it, because the bathroom stuff, it's either a part of a joke or people don't want to talk about it. So I imagine having a condition like this, it can be very hard to find support, find information, find people who want to talk about it if they're dealing with it, because it's such a personal, and in a lot of ways, people might find it humiliating in a lot of ways. And so it's got to have not just the physical effects, but the psychological effects and the emotional effects of it. It's got to be pretty hard.
Yeah, and I'll be the first to admit, I never told anyone. I mean, even to this day, people find out and they're like, well, I never knew. And I'm like, well, how would you know if I never told you? And even one of the last interviews I did, and my mom actually listened to it, and she actually called me. She's like, I never knew it got that bad. And I told her, well, how would you know if I never told you? So like, yeah. It's extremely hard to talk about. Like you said, it's a very personal subject, and a lot more people suffer from it than and you'll never know because they're not going to talk about it. And so that's when I decided to open up about it a little bit. It actually surprised me that people were so surprised. But thinking about it, it makes sense, and it's incredibly embarrassing. And And I don't blame people for hiding it, but at the same time, they need to know that there's options out there. There's social media groups out there. There's support groups out there. There's people that have, other than myself, that have found their own paths, however it may be, to, I mean, maybe not 100% reverse it like I was able to, but at least manage the symptoms, or at least half of them, by changing lifestyle a little bit, and then making your life livable again. Because, you get to a point where some people, and including myself at one time, we're like, you don't have a life, man. Your life is avoiding food so you can make it through the day, and then once you get home, recovering, because the day was so stressful and so long, and you haven't eaten for days. So you can get stuck in this vicious cycle of never doing anything but attempting to survive in your own little world, and I mean, that's not living. That's you're not thriving at that point. You're just surviving, and that's not what we're here for.
Yeah, and I can imagine that, a lot of people who are shut-ins and things like that, this could be a factor in some of those people's lives, that they just don't want to go out anymore. They don't want to go try to socialize because they could end up in a horrible situation that is going to affect them in a lot of ways, socially as well as emotionally. Before we get into how diet helped you, I want to kind of dive in a little bit about what were your coping mechanisms and how did you emotionally deal with this when you were going through it?
Again, this was the worst of it was in all of my 20s. And I did the manly thing and ignored it as hard as I could. I wanted to live my life. I wanted to hang out with my friends. I wanted to do what my other 21-year-old friends were doing. I wanted to go to the bars. I wanted to go to the clubs. So I would intentionally starve myself, because if you didn't eat, then there was nothing to go out the other end. But then I would still go out and party with them, and I would just deal with the consequences the next morning, which I will be the first to admit is not in any way, shape, or form an advisable way of going about it. But I 100% hid it from everyone except for my doctor. And even when I went to my doctor, I played it down, because like early 20s, when something on your body doesn't work the way it's supposed to, it takes an impact on you emotionally. It takes it's very hard to deal with. It's very hard to understand. You don't have you're supposed to be bulletproof at that age. So I did not go about it the way I should have. Had I, in hindsight, even if I would have gone with the advice the doctors gave me, which I did, I took all the medications, but had I just listened a little more to them and put a little more effort, I wasn't working with them. I was taking directions from them and just running with it, and then just, downplaying my symptoms and saying they were okay, and just trying to live my life and just carry on. But yeah, definitely not the way to go through it. I just pretty much muscled my way through it. I still worked 40 to 50 hours a week. I was still training martial arts. I was still training weightlifting. And in my head, I was able to convince myself that, that's not what sick people do. Sick people don't go to work every morning. Sick people don't work 10 hours a day painting cars. Sick people don't leave their day job to go to martial arts in the evening and then go home and weightlift after that. And I just kept myself busy, and kept the mindset that, I'm not that sick because this is what I can do. Like the day that I can't go to work, that's the day I'm sick. But it's amazing what you can convince yourself of in the moment. And what all happens, like say, you stub your toe. The first thing you think of is, oh, it's not that bad. It's not that bad. It's not that bad. Before you even bother to check if you broke anything, it's just where your mind goes. Now stretch that over an internal disease that no one can see that goes on for a decade. So, I have no idea looking back, like how much damage I could have done, or how many years at the end of my life I could have taken off had I stayed down that path. Luckily, as of now, all the symptoms and damage has been reversed. But only time will tell if those actions back then are going to have a very negative consequence on me as I get older.
I think a lot of what you're describing too goes into a lot of mentality of a lot of men and how we deal with issues. And, as men, one, we don't want the world to know we have a problem, whether it's emotional, whether it's psychological, whether it's physical, because that's weakness. And we're not supposed to be weak. We're supposed to be strong. We're supposed to be, Hercules. And then the other aspect too, and this is not just for men, but women or anybody, there's probably that aspect of not wanting to be a burden to others, still wanting to be, involved in social, but you don't want others to worry about you. You don't want others to stress about your situation. I'm just going to deal with it. I'll be fine. leave it alone. So that was kind of playing in that with your situation as well.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You know, I was just like, I'll just deal with it. I'll be fine. You know, you don't worry about me. I got this kind of thing. And yeah, it was just, you know, and a lot of it was the age, you know, had it come to me later in life where I had a little more self-awareness, I'm sure I would have approached it differently. But again, you know, I started getting symptoms, I want to say about 19 all the way up to when I started managing it better when I hit 30. But yeah, from 19 to my late 20s was just all stubbornness and fighting through it and just pushing through it and ignoring everyone and everything. And, you know, even if at that time had someone mentioned to me, oh, you should probably just change your diet, I'd been like, I got beers to drink this weekend. You know, it would have been that kind of thing. So, you know, and we'll get into that a little bit later, but in case you haven't noticed, I'm incredibly stubborn. So there wouldn't have been a person on this earth that would have been able to convince me to change. I just had to come to it on my own terms. And luckily I came to it, you know, in the grand scheme of things at a young enough of an age to hopefully make a impact in my later years.
Yeah, you know, this is something I'm still struggling with myself, and to you know, bring up if I have a problem with something, regardless of whether it is what it is. We had talked a little bit off the show that you had an issue struggling with identity, not identifying yourself as the ulcerative colitis guy anymore, and so I want to get into how this condition did affect your identity back then, and then we're going to start transitioning into how diet started helping, and then later want to touch on how you view yourself now. But I really am interested in letting the listeners hear all this emotional and psychological aspects of dealing with this, because your condition leads to a lot of the probably similar emotions and psychological factors that other people are dealing with their ailments, whether it's ulcerative colitis or anything else. And I really think this story can help people.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, and one of the hardest things is, I mean, you hear it from everyone, so it's going to sound very cliche, but like it's not your fault. You know, a lot of these things, at least in my case, it was environmental. It's not always environmental. Like I said, nobody knows. And so, you know, there's a lot of self-blame. There's a lot of hate. There's a lot of anger, you know, why me kind of stuff. Like you blame yourself for everything. And it's like, you know, you get to a point where, you know, a food isn't going to sit right with you, but screw it. I got to live my life kind of thing. And then you just deal with the consequences later. So a lot of it's just like never really gets expressed publicly. It's just embarrassment, you know, shame, you know, hatred. You become an angry person because like, why me kind of thing. And you blame yourself for a lot of it. And then, I mean, a lot of times too, you start to blame everyone around you because you got no one else to blame. You know, you start blaming the medical staff. You start blaming your doctors because they're not doing enough. You start blaming the drugs they put you on. And I mean, and there needs to be more talk about taking a lot of this into your own hands and doing a lot of your own research, which is obviously a lot easier now in the age of the internet. 20 years ago was a little bit different. But, you know, there's a lot of information out there that can help everyone. And so instead of having to just sit by yourself, like, you know, when I was diagnosed, I was never told about a support group. I was never told that, like, hey, X amount of people your age suffer from this. It's not just you. As far as I knew, I was the only person. Nobody else in my family suffered from it. But so it can get incredibly complicated, and it definitely plays tricks with your mind. It gets hard. And I remember, I tell this story quite often. So if you've listened to my interviews I had before, when I first started having issues, it started with blood in the stool. And obviously 18 years old, 19 years old, you're like, okay, that'll just go away. And it didn't go away. And so I finally made a doctor's appointment with the help of my mom, because I told her what was going on. She said, okay, let's go to a doctor. I'm like, all right. So I make a doctor's appointment. Never met this doctor before, never knew nothing about him. The guy barely introduced himself. I mean, and from this medical standpoint, there's one easy way to tell if there's blood in your stool, and that's to put a glove on and see if they find any. Mind you, I wasn't even 20 years old yet. I had no idea what was going on. So this doctor's like, okay, you know, lay on the table, lay on your side, bring your knees to your chest. He didn't tell me what he was going to do. And so he checks the oil, so to speak, and does his little test. And he's like, oh, yeah, we found blood in there. And at the time, like, well, that's kind of why I'm here. He's like, all right, well, here's a prescription for these meds. Take these, come back in 2 weeks. That was the end of the appointment. I'm 19 years old. I went straight home and took a shower and cried in the shower because I didn't want anyone to know I was crying because I was terrified. I had no idea what was going on. You know, like that was like the most traumatic experience of my life to that point. And so like, you know, that, you know, in hindsight, that's just bad medical practice. You know, he could have been a little more compassionate. He could have been like, hey, look at this young dude here who's obviously having health issues. Maybe I can walk him through this and explain to him what I'm going to do instead of just going after it, patting me on the back and here's a prescription and come back in 2 weeks. And then that was the end of that appointment. So like I dealt with that trauma for quite a while. And I don't know, to this day, like that is probably the only thing I still hold a little bit of anger about was had that guy taken a little extra time to explain a few things, I think it could have set me off on a different path. But when that's your first experience, it leaves a really, really bad taste in your mouth, for lack of a better term. And even then, like I went back and I would imagine he gave me steroids, probably prednisone, which I mean, it's a very common drug. It almost fixes everything with its own list of side effects. And I remember going back and I'm like, yeah, I feel great. I'm like, whatever's in this bottle, just give me more of that. And that's when he was like, oh, it doesn't work that way. He's like, you can't stay on this stuff. I'm like, oh, no, the stuff works. Just give me more of this. No, you can't stay on this stuff. And then, you know, we got to taper off of that and then get you other medications. And then from there, it was just this roller coaster ride, you know, up and down of symptoms and medications, controlling it and not. But not being able to control the variable of diet because I didn't know. I mean, how can you manage medications if there's no baseline of anything? You know, if you're just going to go out and live your life, and you know, for me, it was a reckless lifestyle. Once I hit 21, if you don't, you know, there's no baseline, there's no stability. It's just a matter of just like I said, throwing darts at a dartboard and finding the next medications that might work for you, might not. But you know, I'm constantly attacking my body with beer and alcohol and junk food and sugar and grains, and you know, at the time you don't know. So it gets weird. It gets very complicated, and kind of got off the rails for a second there, but
no, man.
But yeah, I mean, a lot of hate, a lot of anger. Like I said, I was told it was PTSD type symptoms, and I mean, looking back, I can definitely agree with that, and that's not to downplay PTSD. And for some of the people that you know have actually been through hard knock lives, that have legitimate PTSD that affects them day to day. Clearly, there's many forms of it. And I would say that it definitely affects you, and it sticks with you long enough to where there's something there where that's diagnosable.
The partying that you were doing as you were younger, I'm kind of wondering if you want to address this. If you don't want to address this, it's fine. But I'm kind of wondering how much of it was I'm partying with my friends to have a good time, and how much of it was self-medication to not deal with the issues at hand in an emotional, psychological level.
Probably 50-50, to be honest. You know, because as anyone who drinks a lot, and I mean, I never got anything crazy. It was weed and alcohol was probably about as nuts as I got. But, you know, you drink enough, you kind of forget about your problems for a little bit. And, you know, and you kind of find a little bit of release there and a little bit of relief for a little while. And then, you know, you're like, oh, that didn't go too bad. Let's try it again. Let's try it again. And I mean, I never got to the point where it actually, like, I never missed work because of it. But I mean, it was, looking back, it was more than it needed to be, and it just became a lot more of a coping mechanism, and it was just fun. You know, it was a little normalcy, a little thing you can go out with your buddies and you're doing what they're doing, and you get to hang out and just forget about stuff for a little while. But in my scenario, or anyone that has an autoimmune disease that definitely needs attention from day one, you've got to get things under control before you go that route. You know, now I can tolerate alcohol just fine. I pretty much just choose not to drink it. But yeah, to answer the question specifically, I'd say it was about 50-50, 50% escape, 50% social.
Mm. Now we've kind of danced around the subject a bit, but you found a fix through diet, a way of treating yourself to alleviate these symptoms. Similar to where Carrie Brown did her diet to fix her brain health, you did it to help fix your gut health. What led you down the keto path and then later carnivore and things like that to address this situation?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I'll preface it a little bit before we get to the keto part. But as I got later into my 20s and had been dating my wife for a few years, we were looking to the future, wanted to have a family, that kind of thing. So we started taking our health a little more seriously. And the drinking slowed down a little bit, the eating cleaned up a little bit, and ironically, looking back, like she decided she wanted to go vegetarian, which ended up having a profound impact on me because it immediately eliminated all the fast food. I never went full vegetarian, but the fact that half of the household did and cleaned up a lot of the junk we were eating, it made a difference with me. So I can't fault her for that. Her going vegetarian for 14 years, she's back on the bright side now, just so everybody's clear. But she went vegetarian for 14 years, actually helped me probably more than anything. So she gets all the credit for how this whole thing started turning around. But once I started taking my health a little more seriously and actually having conversations with my doctor instead of just kind of like, just tucking everything away, the medications had a chance to do their thing. I was still on quite a few medications, and they still had their own list of side effects that are less than ideal, but they were working. And I rode that out from my late 20s to easily to my mid 30s. Some of what I dealt with those specific medications were you constantly gain weight, and you're always told, hey, the older you get, you'll gain 5 pounds a month for no reason. It's just becoming a man and getting older. And I thought that was normal. And at the time, I was still weightlifting at the time and exercising at the time, and it didn't matter what I did, couldn't stop gaining weight. No matter how much I dieted, no matter how much I exercised, no matter how much I went to the gym, the weight just kept coming and coming and coming and coming. And in hindsight, broken metabolism and side effects of medicine probably contributed almost all of it. I mean, my diet wasn't the best, but it was the best of what I knew at the time, as clean of a standard American diet as you can eat, which might work for a metabolically healthy person, but definitely was not working for me. So, I mean, by the time I found keto, things were pretty good as far as how I felt. Metabolically, I was still pretty busted up, but compared to how I had felt the decade before, I felt great. There was no comparison there. I just didn't know how good it could get. So again, as I stated, I train automotive painters. Everybody knows Mary Roberts, good friend of everyone. Her husband, Brett, also is an automotive painter. So this all just happened by chance. He ends up working at one of my shops, so I go down there to train him on our paint. There's a bunch of different paint systems out there, as there is car manufacturers, Chevy, Ford. There's BASF, Sherwin-Williams, all of that. So I go down there to get him familiarized with our paint. Part of the deal is, we sit on automotive, we paint cars, kind of go through the process. Here's how you do this. Here's how you do this. Let's go grab some lunch. We can talk about it over lunch. And during lunch, that's when the diet came up, because he isn't specifically keto, but he's extremely low carb, and his wife is Keto Mary. So there's some influence there. And he's like, I'm on a diet. I'm like, well, you tell me, whatever you want. And he's like, well, there's a barbecue joint down the street. And so over the course of the next hour, we start talking keto. I had never even really heard of it. And, so we're sitting down eating barbecue, and I'm, in my head, I'm like, so all this is okay. Everything in this platter in front of me, this brisket, this pork belly. And he's just like, yeah. And, he kind of just gives me the brief overview. And in my head, I'm like, this guy is out of his mind. And like, I got gut issues. This guy's talking about eating fat. Like, that ain't never going to fly. Like, there's no way. There's no way this is going to, nope. I'm like, I like the idea. I mean, I don't know if you ever met Brett, but the dude is a monster. Guy walks around at like under 10% body fat and is an avid weightlifter. So like, you look at the guy, you're like, well, I'll never look like that, but man, it seems to be working for him. So, I was like, well, yeah, it ain't going to work. We get through the workday, and I get home, and I specifically remember I just hop on my phone and I Google ketogenic diet for gastrointestinal issues. And I just left it at that, kind of keep it as general as possible. And one of the first 2 articles is I got as far as reading as it may help with certain gut issues, including ulcerative colitis and Crohn's. And I just stopped reading there. I'm like, you know what? That's all I need. I'll give this an 8-week shot. What's the worst that could happen? I pretty much tried everything else at this point, outside of being a vegan. I dabbled in a little bit of vegetarian with my wife. And I was like, you know what? 8 weeks, we'll give it a shot. We'll see how it goes. I get to cross this off my list. The medications are working. What do I got to lose? Right. So I start and I attempt to get started. And that's when you go through what everybody goes through. When you walk into your pantry, you're just like, crap. I can't eat this, can't eat that. You start reading labels. All my tubs of protein powder. Nope, can't take that anymore. And so I just like, you know what? We're going to slowly wean ourselves off. Like, I already have all this chicken and rice. I'm going to eat it. Then I just won't buy more. I already have all this protein powder. I'm going to go through this open tub. I'll give the rest away. I just won't buy more. So it took me a little bit to wean in, which we'll touch on that. Very important when you have gut issues. I weaned myself in, so it probably took a couple weeks, and then my 8-week trial started. And honestly, and a lot of credit goes to Keto Mary through her husband, because when you start keto or any diet, there's always that one person you kind of poke and jab at with all the dumb questions. I beat her up for a little while. She kindly answered all my questions, as quickly as she could, mostly via text. Kind of put me in the right direction. So like, first thing I noticed, but within days, joint pain started disappearing. I couldn't believe. And part of the reason why I quit painting cars was debilitating back and knee pain that I almost couldn't take anymore. Like by Fridays, getting out of bed was a chore. My lower back would hurt, my knees would hurt, and then I did not want to be that guy that has to pop a handful of Advil just to go to work every morning. But I just thought that was normal. So in a few days, the joint pain slowed down tremendously, started feeling a lot better. And I would say even within 2 weeks, the changes in my digestion and my gut were profound, to where like I was in a habit of, show up at a shop and just immediately hit the bathroom just for safety reasons. You might not even have to go to the bathroom. You just go just because let's just kind of see what happens. It's better to take care of that, get out of the way before it becomes urgent. And I realized that like I wasn't needing to do that anymore. And, we were only a couple of weeks in. And then from there, it just got better and better and better. Everything got better. And the weight started coming down a little bit, which was astounding for me, because I always struggled. Like I said earlier, I always struggled gaining weight. And then, my 8 weeks went up, and I'm like, there's something going on here that we can't just stop this just yet. This needs to carry on. And so I've always stuck with strict high fat keto, because that's all I knew. And it's always seemed to work well for me. And the funny thing is I specifically remember, like, I was probably about 6 months in, and I started taking my medication every other day just to see what would happen, and so I rode that out for a good while, completely against my doctor's orders. That's an important thing to understand. My doctor did not recommend this at all. So I started taking my medications every other day. And after about a year of that, I specifically recall going to leave for work. I'm like, oh man, I didn't take my medication. Ran back to the cupboard, popped the cupboard open, grabbed my medication. I'm sitting there staring at it. And it dawned on me, I hadn't taken it for 2 weeks. And in my previous life, that was an immediate death sentence, for lack of a better term. That would not have, 2 weeks would have been bad. Yeah, so I'm staring, and I'm about to open it, and I'm like, man, the urgency's gone. Bathroom visits are down. Joint pain's gone. At this point, I think I dropped 20 pounds, and I'm just staring at and even my wife had commented, and she's like, you're right. I'm like, man, I haven't taken these in 2 weeks. And she was kind of surprised. And for a brief second, I panicked, because I'm like, oh, but wait. So I'm like, what I'm gonna do? I was like, I know what it feels like to get sick. I know when everything's gonna go sideways. I go, I'm just gonna put them back up. We'll see how it goes. In my head, I figured I might get 2-3 weeks out of this. I might be able to see how long it rides out. Then I'll go back to the medications. I'll make a doctor's appointment, and I'll just correct course, and we'll go from there. And truth be told, it's been 2.5 years. I haven't taken any medication. Doctor, I've since changed doctors, but when he found out, he was not happy. I pretty much took a reaming from him for the whole time I was at that appointment. And I specifically called the day I had to go in for my appointment. I was in the lobby filling out the paperwork, and I was like, my adrenaline was pumping so hard, I was shaking. I was just so nervous. Like, it was almost like getting called to the principal's office when you're wrong. And I'm standing there just trying to fill out the paperwork, hands are shaking, can't even sign. And then the nurse asks, like, oh, you're still on your medications? And I'm like, no. And she looks at me and she's like, well, how long have you been off them? And at the time, I'm like, 6 months. And she looks at me kind of sideways. She's like, well, why? I go, man, I honestly don't think I need them. And I kind of explained to her, because what happens. Like, you talk to the nurse, they write everything down. The doctor comes in, gives it a brief overview, and typically you're out of there. So I was trying to give her all the information, hoping she would forward it to him, and I could have a real conversation with this man. So I gave her all the information. And I kid you not, I was shaking like a leaf, because I just did not know what to expect. I had never told anyone, let alone my doctor. And so she's like, okay, writes it all down like it's no big deal. And I was like, all right, well, that went better than I thought. And he comes in, sits at his laptop, so all you see is the side of his face as he types. And he's just like, oh, how's it going? And I was like, it's going great. He's like, I see you lost weight. I'm like, yeah. I feel awesome. Everything, the symptoms are gone, this, that, and the other. And he's like, oh, so he's like, are you still taking the, whatever milligrams or whatever milligrams or whatever? And I just took a deep breath and I said, no. And that was the only time that man has ever stopped typing to look me in the eyes. And so he looks me in the eyes and he's like, why? And I'm like, honestly, I don't think I don't need them. And he looks at me and says, who told you that? And I'm like, well, no one specifically. I go, look, I just cut out all sugar and all grains, stopped eating all processed food. I go, I cook everything I eat now. I'm like, and I go, it literally made a world of difference. Like, I don't have any symptoms at all. And he proceeded to lay into me like it was nobody's business. And from that point, all I could say was like, look, I go, you're the medical professional, I'm not. I go, what do you want to do from here to find out if I made the right decision or not? We immediately need labs right now, and we got to get you in for a colonoscopy. You don't know what kind of damage you could have been doing. And I said, you want to do the colonoscopy tomorrow? Let's do it tomorrow. Well, we can't do it tomorrow because there's this and that and the other. But go upstairs and get labs right now. So I got the labs done, scheduled a colonoscopy for a couple weeks out. Got through that appointment, and as the appointment comes up, I'm getting nervous. I'm like, I don't, maybe this was all a big mistake. That we're about to find out. This is how it's all going to go. And by this point, I had been 6 months straight carnivore. So it was going to go all good or all bad. If I was going to break it, it was going to be broken by the time I went in for this colonoscopy. So long story short there, I get the procedure done. They put you out for it. So he comes out, talks to my wife. We've been through this many times before. She's used to the talk. And he pretty much just gives me a clean bill of health, says everything looks fine, turns around and walks away. And she's just sitting there awestruck like, wait. Like, this is kind of a big deal. And like, this is the end of the conversation. So at this point, she's just waiting for me to wake up because, this is huge, like absolutely zero damage to my intestines, reversal of all symptoms, reversal of all intestinal damage. Blood work came back perfect. The easiest way I can describe it is, had I gone to a random doctor and said, I'm just here for blood work and a colonoscopy just to see how things are, that doctor would have gave me a clean bill of health without having known my medical history. And, this other guy the last doctor that I went to didn't even want to entertain the conversation, didn't have a question for me, that was the last time I talked to that guy, partially due to me because I didn't want to go back. But it just astounded me that, here's a guy that, 10, 15 years of issues, kind of figured it out through lifestyle and, went through all the medical procedures that are recommended and everything came back completely reversed and 100% healthy. And this guy wasn't even willing to entertain the conversation or ask me a question about it. And that left kind of a really bad taste in my mouth. So I haven't gone back to him. I've since gone to their doctor. I'm working with them. And actually, I just got the email this morning. I had blood work done a week ago, and all the results are in my portal. And I was about to open it. I'm like, nope, now's not the time. I got to talk to Yogi. I'm going to be studying this information for a minute. But I go back next week, and we're going to sit down. I had full blood work done, hormones, everything. So we'll see how that turns out. I'm not in the least bit concerned. But yeah, that's the long, short version of how keto had pretty much turned everything around for me, and carnivore.
I gotta wonder too, with all the gut irritation when it comes to like fast food, even when they say something's all natural, like annatto coloring, which can lead, the side effect of annatto is gut irritation. I gotta wonder how much of the plant products were contributing to your gut issues of the plant derivatives that are used in these all natural processed products.
Oh, I'm sure a lot, because even now, I still lean heavily towards carnivore. Like the running joke is, and I think Miles Russell's coined this, was I'm carnivore and I cheat with keto. So like even now, like I'm mostly carnivore, but when I do decide to eat a salad, and I can tolerate it just fine, but I can tell there's a difference. Like last night I ate a salad and no negative consequence of it, but there was a little bit of gut rumbling and, an extra visit to the bathroom probably due to the fiber, but I mean, everything there was perfectly healthy and normal. So I'm not in the least bit concerned, but I could imagine, in the fast food world versus a salad I just ate, that it can't be good for you, and even then, the only advice I got from a doctor, and I believe this doctor, was, it was either in Chicago or Michigan, was saying that, he's like, yeah, plants can irritate you. And that was about as medical and scientific as that conversation got. And again, going back to what they recommend, the biggest recommendation you hear even to this day from people in the support groups is the doctors will tell you, eat what you can tolerate. Like that's the diet advice. So like, And if you don't dig deep, in the low carb community, everybody's on their own journey and everybody digs deep. But if you're just an average dude on the standard American diet, what the hell kind of diet advice? Eat what you can tolerate.
It's unfortunately in the medical industry, especially here in the US, but it's also around the world because we set the standards for the rest of the world. We did it through the standard American diet. And we also do it in the medical industry for right or wrong. And unfortunately, our medical industry is heavily influenced by lobbying and pharmaceutical, and it goes top down. They pay the top people, and then the top people give the marching orders to all the doctors down below. So they really don't want to research the diet and how it affects, because for them is no profit. It takes money out of this industrial medical complex that they've created, and whereas if you like, hey, I'm going to eat a steak, my stomach feels better. Like that's not something that they can make money off of. They can't prescribe you a steak.
Yeah, I mean, and again, like, I don't want to bash all doctors, and to put we don't eat cherries, so to put a little olive on top. The doctor I'm working with now is more of a functional medicine root cause doctor, and I've only been there once to establish care, and then once to get my physical and blood work done. So I got to go back for my third visit. But this doctor actually trademarked their own healthcare pyramid, like kind of think of like the food pyramid, but it's their method of healthcare, where the base is diet and lifestyle, and it gets smaller and smaller and smaller, where it gets to the very top, and the very top is medication and surgery. And every time I go in there, they got some anti-sugar film playing. I think one was Fed Up, and one was, I remember the last one it was, I don't remember, but some documentary that's against the sugar industry. Every time you go in there, there's grain brains in the lobby. There's books stacked up everywhere. There's always a documentary playing that has something to do against anti-sugars. So as soon as I walked in, I'm like, I think this place is going to be all right. And I mean, even now, like, you go on their website and they have their quote unquote 10 commandments, and it's down to which water filter you should buy for your house, which mattress you should get, what your pillow should be made out of, how many plants per room you should have for the best oxygen, and which ones are better for the bedroom, like how much water you should drink a day. There's a market in there for raw milk, organic eggs. He's like, and they tell you, like, look, it's going to be expensive, but if you have nowhere else to get it and you want it, at least here's something.
Yeah.
And they don't push, they have their own diet that they go by, which they call pagan, which is paleo vegan. But even she's like, look, she's like, everything that we talked about, you're already doing it. No one's going to talk to you about diet here. She's like, so we're just going to breeze over that part. The only negative comment she had was that my BMI was a little higher than it should be for my height, but we all know how that goes. But yeah. But the point being, they're out there. I mean, I had to do quite a bit of research to find them. But this lady, she's amazing. And that whole practice seems to be that way. Like, that's their philosophy. You've got to fit in, and you've got to understand that we're not here. And she would told me flat out, she's like, look, if you came in with a serious issue and I had to prescribe you medicine, she's like, I'm going to prescribe you medicine. She's like, that's my job. She's like, but while I prescribe you that medicine, we're going to address root cause and get you off that as quickly as possible if it's an option. And as soon as she said that, I was like, I'm home.
Yeah.
So it's I'm very excited about it. And then she also referred me to a gastroenterologist, because I'm overdue, partly due to my own stubbornness, for another colonoscopy and to get that whole process done. But based on her recommendation, who they recommend, I have a feeling it's going to go a lot better this time.
Yeah, and we are seeing more doctors this way. And when I was saying top down, the people got to understand, and I had this conversation with a doctor who's part of our group, Dana O'Leary. People think that the pharmaceutical industries are throwing money into the doctor's door and making them prescribe, but that's not necessarily what's happening. The doctors are getting their marching orders from the higher ups, the political admin side of things up there, who are receiving all these gifts and donations and things like that, then making the orders for the other doctors to follow. So, like, there's even doctors who know they could be doing a better job through diet, through lifestyle, but they know that if they make the jump and they try to do it in a different way, in some areas they could be jeopardizing their license, just like Tim Noakes and a few others that have been on several podcasts. So I definitely don't want to demonize the doctors, because the doctors are a lot of them are doing the best they can with the tools that they have.
100%.
And then the other factor is we have a very much, you were talking about how your doctor only spent a little bit of time with you, but majority of our medical system in the U.S. is very overtaxed when it comes to the doctors. The ratio of people that the doctors have to treat is so high. They're literally like they go in like I've heard doctors set their watch to vibrate that I'm only going to spend 10 minutes in here. I got to get in, get out, because I got to go to the next one. Because again, that's how their hospital, if they're working under a large hospital organization, let's say like Scripps or something like that, that's how their hospital makes money. Like if you're a painter on cars, the more cars you push through, the more money you make. Yep. That's the same philosophy right there. And so it's not necessarily the doctor's fault, and I want to try to take some pressure off of that, but it's the systems that we've set up that have caused some problems.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. That's kind of why I kind of ended the discussion with they're out there. I can't blame all the doctors. And again, like I said, I don't hold hate towards any of them. My health took a significant change for the better when I decided to work alongside of them instead of just working directly. Adding my input, taking my health and my own responsibility made a huge difference for me, as opposed to just going there, taking advice and leaving. Had I had more confidence and a larger voice when I was younger, and it'd been like, hey man, I need you to explain this to me a little better, or can we discuss this a little bit more? Chances are they probably would have been okay with it. But at the time, I was looking to get in and out of there as quick as possible so I could get back to life and pretend like it never happened. And I'll take 100% responsibility for that. And no one paid the price for that except for me. So that one's 100% on me.
Yeah, it's and that's the other aspect of patient care. We have to take responsibility for ourselves, and what we do and the choices we make. So we contribute to the problem as well as patients when we don't do that. So I wanted to go kind of bring this back to one of the earlier questions. Now, what is the Alberto identity? Compared to what it was before?
Oh, well, when you come out the other side of years of trauma, let's call it, it's you appreciate everything a lot more. Like the little things, going on vacation. I got this and even in the support groups, people are like, well, what does remission feel like? And there's this picture that my wife took of me. We were down in the Ozarks. I mean, not a bathroom for probably 5 miles. My biggest concern was if my daughter's got to use the bathroom, this is going to get really weird. And we were in the lake, and I was on this big floating mattress thing, and I'm just laying, didn't even know she took a picture of me. I'm laying arms behind my head, just wearing my swimming trunks, just bathing in the sun. And then people ask, like, what does remission feel like? I always send them that picture. I'm like, this is the best I can describe it. And I tell them exactly what I told you about the bathrooms and my daughters. Like, my concern was for them. My concern wasn't for me. Like, it's just not a care in the world. It was just that moment, laying in the sun, water splashing on me, kids screaming all around me. And that, I always think about that picture. I'm probably going to frame it one of these days, because it's going to look really vain, but it holds a significant meaning to me. I mean, now, it's I try to attack everything. I feel like I was held back and held down long enough that now I almost feel like I got to kind of overcompensate for it. And I just tend to take challenges, whether physical or mental or, work, and I hit them with everything I got, and I try not to hold back. I know what it feels like to have something completely control you and you not being able to do anything about it. And now I tend to seek things out the other way around. Like, I will purposely put myself in uncomfortable positions physically with, workout challenges or, whatever. And just to come out the other side, because there's a huge difference when you're incredibly uncomfortable and it's not your choice, to whether you can put yourself in incredible discomfort by your own choice and knowing it's coming. So even with the weightlifting stuff and a little bit of powerlifting that I do, it's going to hurt, but I know it's going to hurt, and I'm in control of the hurt. And as sick as it sounds, I really enjoy that.
Yeah, and it's it's one of those things where you find something that works for you, and everybody told you the opposite before, and it's like this revelation, and it just opens up. So what else was I wrong about? What else was I? That's been the case for me, you know. And what else did they tell me it wasn't right? So that kind of opened the door for like more research, more trials, more doing, you know, getting away from the standard dogmas of the social aspect of dieting and everything that's been around forever.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I like to close out the show before we do all the contact stuff with 5 questions. Especially, I like to ask our keto people. And my first question is, who are your top 3 health heroes?
Whew. Well, first I have to go with Mary Roberts, Keto Mary, only because her personal involvement and how I got started in all this. Second, probably Dr. Sean Baker. Back at KetoCon, I had a chance to meet him, and like I don't fanboy over anyone, like, you know, celebrities don't do it for me, but I saw Dr. Baker and I literally gasped. And it was only because like listening to him on his original Joe Rogan podcast, like kind of really like affirmed a lot of what I thought I was doing right, and kind of got me into carnivore, which carnivore is like super keto if you could dial it in right. And everything he said just worked. And the guy is a giant. The guy is a monster. So just being able to meet him was cool. Vinny Tortorich, guy's been doing this forever. You know, and what I love about Vinny Tortorich is he's all he says is no sugar, no grains. And he said it on many podcasts. If you go no sugar, no grains, that's more than half the battle right there. Call it whatever you want. You stick with that. That's more than half the battle. And then can't forget the usual guys in our space. You know, Danny Vega's a pretty close friend of mine. I text the guy on a regular basis, as does everyone, I'm sure. You know, Jonathan Shane, Robert Sykes, the usual crew. You know, Gormy, we all know Gormy. There's a ton of information out there, and they don't got to be big names. You know, even within the Mans Club group, there's people that post stuff in there that's incredibly helpful. You may not know the guy. The guy might not know a bunch about keto, but he might just post something that you're like, wow, that's a really good idea. I never looked at it that way. I take value in that stuff too.
Yeah, it's funny where you can find a lot of your information. I got to meet Sean Baker out at Keto Fest too. He's one of the few guys I was standing looking eye to eye to at the whole conference. So it was like, hey, all right, kind of gravitated. There's another big dude. So the next question is, I just lost my train of thought. Hold on a second. The next question I have is what is a major health myth that if you could get rid of it tomorrow, what would that be?
Standard American diet. Aside from that, the red meat thing, and I don't argue on social media. Here's my rules for social media: don't argue, don't read links for the most part, especially if it starts from an argument, and I don't post links to anything, especially if it starts with an argument. And so something about red meat got brought up, and I mistakenly made the argument that I probably eat 2 to 3 pounds of beef every day, and I have for years. And then the whole cholesterol thing came up, you know, based on the red meat. And the guy's like, well, I need you to cite some information on that. And I just commented back and said, it's out there. Like, I don't do that. I don't post links. I'm not going to, first of all, you're not going to read it. Then you're just going to find a link to a study that's going to go against what I said. And I'm not going to read that. But yeah, the whole red meat thing, that is the ruminant meats in general. Like, I wish that would just go away. People would just accept that it's great for you, and the cleaner you can get it, the better. But even grocery store ain't bad for you. It's better than anything else. I think it was Dr. Ken Berry that said that even if you decide to live off mustard and hot dogs, you'd be far better off the standard American diet.
Yeah, Peter Ballerstedt was on, and he made the point of telling the audience that I'm here to tell you that the grocery store, what you find at the Piggly Wiggly, what you find at the Safeway, whatever, it's safe, it's healthy, eat it. So
I have the benefit of living in Central Texas, so local pastured beef is dirt cheap. So I mean that's what I tend to gravitate to. But if it wasn't for that, grocery store 100%.
We got it all here in Connecticut too. It's amazing. It's such a difference from California. So my next question is, what are 3 foods you think everybody should include in their diet?
Include red meat, healthy fats, and by healthy fats, I mean I don't care if it's butter, ghee, MCT oil. And if you're down for cruciferous veggies, have at them. And even as far as keto goes, like there's times where I'll post I'll have like a 2-pound salad, which is an incredible amount of salad. And we're like, well, your carbs are gonna go over for the day. I'm like, yeah, you're probably right, but tell me someone who ever got unhealthy from a 2-pound salad when they eat it once every other week. So definitely get your veggies in if that's your thing. Personally, I need to eat more seafood. I'm not a fan of seafood. I'm trying to figure out a way to do it, and I need to eat more organ meats. But yeah, go that route.
Maybe I can help you out with a couple of recipes.
I'm sure you can, and I would gladly try them out.
So I tell you, fish love to swim in butter. People don't know that. So
I like that already.
There you go. What are 3 foods you think everybody should avoid?
For me specifically, I mean, the 2 usual sugars and grains, those got to go 100%. And my argument for grains is, yeah, you might be metabolically healthy enough to digest them just fine, but you're going to have a hard time convincing me that the grains of today are the exact same grains of our forefathers and of, years past, generations past. There's things going on in the grain industry and crops in general, which you'd have a hard time convincing me that they're as clean, as healthy as what our grandparents had. And then industrial seed oils, hands down, that one probably more than anything.
Yeah, and it's amazing how much consensus we get on these topics, and that's one of the reasons why I like to ask that question. My last question is, if there was something that you could change overnight about the medical industry, what would that be?
Patience. And I mean, that goes for the patient and the doctor. I just wish that they would take more time. Like we talked about a minute ago, sometimes it's just like the cycle. Like you've got to get them in and out. You got to get them in and out. That's how we make money. And that's the way the world turns. Not likely to change anytime soon. But I wish individuals had a little more patience to take their health and responsibility into their own hands. And the doctors were offered the time to have a little more patience to guide them through it better. And they're out, like I said, they're out there, but I wish it was like that for every doctor everywhere.
Yeah. That's a good one. I don't think I've had anybody that worded it quite that way, and that's really cool. I like that one. So, if people want to find Alberto or the Keto Cholo, what is give us all the contact details.
Instagram, of course, l.ketocholo. It started off as a joke that you had Chris on. He coined that name, and it just kind of stuck, and now it's like there's no going back. It's got to stick around. If you're into the Facebooks, I am an admin in the Ketogenic Athlete and the Keto Mans Club. Probably the next couple places to get a hold of me. Definitely the easiest for sure.
Definitely. And I also want to encourage guys, if you're looking for a place, one, if you're starting a keto journey and you're looking for a place to start out, the Keto 101 Mans Club is a great place to go. 2, if you already are in the keto journey, you're looking for support, more information, see what other guys are doing, just a place to hang out, and even just people share all kinds of stuff in the group. If you listen to Chris Duckett's episode, we talked about that quite a bit. It's a great place to be. It's one of the places I love. If you are interested in supporting the Fatty Joe Show, there's a lot of ways you can do it. First, you could leave a comment down below, rate in the show as well. That helps the algorithms on especially Apple Podcasts push it out more. We do have a Patreon group. We try to keep this listener supported. So if you want to go to patreon.com/thefattyjoe show, you can support on Patreon. And also you could watch us on YouTube. And the more YouTube views, the more comments and ratings and stars we get on the YouTube, will also help bring in some resources. You can check out carrieround.com for a lot of the other programs, the cookbooks and things that we are doing. And if you want to talk to us, you can go over to the Carrie Brown and Yogi Parker. Hold on. You can go to the Carrie Brown and Yogi Parker. You can go to the Keto Kitchen with Carrie Brown and Yogi Parker and check us out there. And I do want to give a couple of shout outs to a couple rock stars that have stayed with us for a long time. And I want to say thank you very much to Dave Davis and to Tina Muheim for supporting us for a whole lot. Thank you so much for being our Patreons. All right, everybody. I will see you on the next show.
Thank you for joining us on the Fatty Joe Show. Be sure to leave a comment and subscribe. It helps the show reach more people. To support the show, as well as Carrie Brown and Yogi's work on the blog, keto recipe development, masterclasses, and to gain access to private Facebook groups and other awards, go to patreon.com/thefattyjoeshow or patreon.com/Carrie Brown. Also, check out our Carrie Brown and Yogi Parker YouTube channel for video versions of the Fatty Joe Show, recipe videos, and more. Join our awesome community on the Facebook group, The Keto Kitchen with Carrie Brown and Yogi Parker, and check out our carriebrown.com website for recipes, blog posts, discounts, cookbooks, masterclasses, and other great stuff. Thank you so much.